Hey guys, Dan here again, coming to you with a bit of a different video series this time. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Dan. I am primarily a Magic the Gathering player with a focus on competitive EDH, or competitive Commander, which is just a specific format. Most of you probably know that because you are subs of our channel, so you watch our videos regularly. But this is going to be the first of several videos for an upcoming TCG called Argent Saga. So I'm expecting there's going to be a little bit of a newer audience coming in for these videos, and hopefully some of you guys will also find this interesting and pick it up like I have. Argent Saga is, as I mentioned, a very, very new TCG. It is barely in alpha. The first set isn't coming out until August, and the Kickstarter only went live like 2 weeks ago, so it's still very early on. I am planning to come to you with a few different videos. This first one is basically an introduction to the game as a whole through the perspective of a Magic player. So hopefully I can speak to my primary audience, my wonderful subs who watch me play competitive EDH far too much, and give you guys the best grasp on this game through your knowledge pool. For those of you who aren't Magic players and are coming from either the Argent Saga Facebook group or Discord or something else, hopefully this is a straightforward and understandable way of processing the basic game mechanics. In the interest of full disclosure, Argent Saga did actually approach us as a channel, offering us a set of the intro decks, seeing if we were interested in producing content for the game, some gameplays and similar. I accepted, and in the interest of fuller disclosure, I'd already purchased 2 different intro decks because I was going to make content for the game for you guys anyways, because I believe that I want to share games I enjoy with you guys. I like to have fun. I like to play games. And I want to bring you the fun that I have with these games. And while I love competitive Commander, it's not the only thing I play. And I have really, really been enjoying Argent Saga. So hopefully this and the series of videos to follow will give you guys a look and an explanation for why I've been enjoying this new TCG so much. And maybe some of you will join me. I would love to play some of these games on stream with you guys. And, share this new game. So, let's take a look. Now, I do want to preface this with the statement that this is an introductory explanation of this card game. So, while I will likely leave out some of the slightly more complex aspects in this video, rest assured that they will be covered in the future. To start off, I want to talk about the basic card types that you will see in this game. And very conveniently, there are not too many. Deck construction starts with the card type in the upper left corner of your screen. This is the champion. Champions are static abilities or activated abilities that provide function to you at any point in the game. You can think of them a lot like an emblem that you have in the command zone, similar to a commander. They dictate the kind of card that can be in your deck, as indicated by the shard indicator in the upper right-hand corner of the card, which I'll cover later. And they provide you with build-around effects that help incline what you should be doing with your deck. We'll talk specifics about that in the future, but for now, remember that your champion is basically a commander with eminence that you can't cast. They provide an effect, they help dictate the shard of card you can play in your deck, and they help you build a core strategy around their ability. The next card type relevant in deck construction is the spirit. Each deck, in addition to their champion, selects a spirit. It does not have to be the same shard as your champion. So this is how you get to multi-shard decks, and how you can splash different shard colors into your primary shard color. you'll see on Fizzy here that there is a number in the upper left corner that was not present for Henna as a champion. This, as I said, I will cover later, but it is their affinity number. This is the amount of cards that share a shard with your spirit you can include in your deck. This is something that you might not be familiar with if you've only played Magic, but the concept of a numerical restriction on the amount of splash cards you can play is something seen reasonably often in other card games. One of the more common ones I know people have played is Netrunner, where you have influence outside of your corporation or your alignment as a runner, and you can only play a certain amount of pips of a given influence. And basically, it lets you incline the meta towards diversity, because a deck cannot be comprised of just the strongest cards, assuming design relatively evenly spaces them out through each of the different shards or each of the different cores or each of the different colors, because you can't just play everything. And so while Magic fixes this by making mana bases the focus of construction to allow what kind of cards you can play, Argent Saga does this through the numerical restrictions similar to how Netrunner did. One is not necessarily superior to the other, they're simply different. Spirits also provide you with certain effects. Currently, each spirit has an ability on top that you can use during your turn, and basically only during your turn. And they have a second ability that is a one-shot use. If you use the second ability, you turn the spirit over. You can't use the first ability or the second ability again. And that second ability you can use at any point. So the spirits provide you with just a little bit more that you can do than your champion. They're often a desperation play or the final nail in someone's coffin. Spirits are very powerful if used properly. The third card type, you don't actually get a choice right now in how you want to play it. This is the Argent Shard. It is the way to produce, the official term is Shardlight, but everyone I know is calling it Rock Juice. To produce the consumable resource necessary to play your units and play your spells, to pay for abilities, and so on. If you look at Argent Shard, it is a basic shard. This does imply that there will be non-basic shards in the future. However, as there are not a whole lot of cards that have been revealed yet, as we're still working our way through Set 1 spoilers, we have not seen a non-basic shard. You will note that the Argent Shard does not produce a specific shard of Shard Light. It produces one. That is because, at this point, Shard Light is generic across all cards. It is simply the consumable resource for this game. There is no fighting with your lands to make the right colors you need at the right time. You just have it. It is because they have restricted what you can and cannot include in your deck in a different way that this is possible. And in my opinion, it does smooth out the ability to play your cards on time fairly effectively. They also do that for other ways, but I'll talk about that later as well. The fourth card type, you additionally have no influence over at this point. These are the towers. The towers are a core mechanic to this game because they are functionally your protective resource. They are your life total. They are, if you played Kaijudo, they're literally your towers, basically. The towers have to be destroyed, and then you have to attack one more time for the Argent Tower, or your opponent, basically, directly. And after you've destroyed each of their 5 towers and attacked one more time, you win the game. The towers provide an interesting catch-up mechanic. When a tower is destroyed, when you destroy your opponent's tower, they get a beneficial effect. And which of these current 5 beneficial effects they get varies based on where it was randomly placed at the start of the game and where you randomly attacked. There's a lot more going on there than just wildly swinging at face-down cards. but that's the topic for a future video. These provide a very interesting rubber band mechanic on the game that lets the losing player not be totally shut out after an aggressive start from another player. Additionally, they force the gameplay to change up between multiple games because the position of the towers and the order in which they are destroyed does influence gameplay and can't be guaranteed. So, when you're constructing your deck, you pick your champion and you choose a spirit. You then take 10 Argent shards and one of each shard tower, and this is basically the non-mutable, immutable is the word there, part of your deck. You can't really change this. You have to have a champion, you have to have a spirit, you have to have 10 shards, currently they have to be 10 Argent shards, and you have to have 5 towers, one of each shard. The next card types are how you get to modify your deck to have the right balance of things you want to do. If picking your champion and your spirit is choosing your commander, then now we're actually going to build the main deck minus the mana base. They are unit, spell, and augment. I'm going to start with unit. Unit is the creature of this game. It is the monster. It is the whatever you want to call it. It's the thing that attacks. It's the thing that has power. It's the thing that destroys towers. It's the thing that kills your opponent, all this stuff. They have a cost, they have a shard, they have a power, they have a name, obviously. They can be legendary. There are not currently any legendary units in circulation right now because there are none in the intro decks, but legendary functions the same way as it does in Hearthstone. You may only include one copy of a given legendary in your deck. Basically, the way that I think Magic kind of wished they had done it. Units also are able to have abilities. They can be static, they can be activated, they can be triggered. There are keyword abilities, there are non-keyword abilities. Basically, if you can imagine it, it's probably something that can be keyworded. Currently, a lot of the keywords are very similar to keyword abilities or ability words in Magic. Unsurprisingly, because a lot of that design space is fundamentally accessible in every card game. I will cover most of these different keywords when I do an in-depth discussion of the unit later in this video, and I will compare them to Magic keywords. That way, as you are my Magic audience, you can have something to tie these two in your head. Next up, there are spells. Spells are similar to units in that they have a cost, they have a shard, and they have an effect. They don't have any power, so they don't sit in play. You'll note on Hurricane Shot that there is a small lightning bolt in the top of the card. That is the Instacast indicator. Instacast meaning you can play this card anytime you have priority. This is the instant or the flash typing or keyword of this game. And any card can have Instacast on it. So they have set up their game in such a way as Mark Rosewater wished he had set up Magic, in that instant would be a super type you can apply to a sorcery or to a creature or to an enchantment. They have provided Instacast as an ability that any card type can have, meaning casting restrictions can be removed simply by adding this keyword to the card. Spells, when you cast them, take an effect and go to your discard pile. Very simple, very straightforward. You're going to be getting that theme a lot, honestly. This game is very straightforward to understand, straightforward to pick up, and that is one of the reasons I really like it. The third type of card you can include in your deck is the Augment type. This has a cost, it has a shard. Augments are permanent cards. They do sit on your playmat. They are static to your play area. They can either modify you as a player, in which case you put them in the bottom left in the augment zone, or they can modify a unit if they have the gear subtyping. The standard shard sword is very similar to what we would consider an equipment. It is an augment that equips to target unit. So you put it onto one of your units, and it provides a static effect, but it can provide any number of things. It provides that effect to the unit. If you have an augment that goes on you, it provides that effect to you. These are the basic card types. It is possible they will introduce more, but I'm just going to cover these for now. Let's take a more in-depth look at each and every one of these card types so that I can explain in a little more detail the different options you have and how they work. This is Henna, the Immoral Conjurer. She is going to be the champion I've used to show you what these cards look like and what parts of these cards matter to us. First off, I want to talk about the shard indicator that you can see in the upper right corner of the card. And we're going to pull that out now so that you can get a better look at it. And so I can put text on the screen because I'm fancy now. The shard indicator is something that you are going to see on every card type so far. There are 5 different colors of shard. These are fire, water, light, dark, and wind. Additionally, there is a 6th symbol, which you can see if you look at the Argent shard, and I'll point that out when we get there. But it is the shardless, basically, symbol, which is for neutral cards, which do exist in this game. They are not associated with a specific shard color, which means that you can play them in any deck using any combination of champion and spirit, because they're basically free for the purposes of deck construction. The champion's shard color indicates the primary shard that you need to use when constructing your deck. Your main deck, the deck you actually shuffle up, draw your units and spells and such from, is a 40-card minimum deck. It can contain no more than the affinity number shown on your spirit, which, if you remember from Fizzy, was 8, which means that at a minimum, you need to include, if you're playing a Henna Fizzy deck, 32 dark cards in your deck, no less. Being able to change the provided spirit out for a different spirit to splash a different shard in is likely going to be very common in this game. And currently, in the intro deck format, which is what ARG is running their 10K open tournaments before the actual game releases, are doing. Those decks are very primarily Henna Fizzy. There is a decent amount of Aten Fizzy, and that's mostly the 2 decks you see. You see some water splashing light, and you see some fire splashing light. But the primary decks being played right now are dark splashing water and wind splashing water. The next thing I want to show is the art and the name. You can see that here. It is art, and there is a name there. Very pretty. I am a big fan of the art direction they're choosing for the game. They're going with a little bit more of an anime style, but they're not going overboard like Force of Will did, which is nice. Also, the intro decks, like a lot of them, have art sketches instead of the actual finalized art of the pre-alpha or the alpha intro decks, and I love that. It is so cool. But there's not digitalized images for that are like high resolution, so I'm not going to use any. You can see them in the videos that are going to be coming out next where there's actual gameplay of this game. That's enough on the art. Third, we have the text box, and this is where the goodies are. This is where the actual meat of the champion sits. You can see from Henna, she is reasonably powerful. Her ability lets you acquire units by playing the game. And in doing so, you have this steady stream of attackers that are able to break any tower they attack. They are pretty effective at removing anything under 3 cost, I would say. And they're hard to interact with because you just keep making more. You're always going to have to destroy towers in battle. You're always pretty much always going to be destroying some amount of units in battle. So you're just maintaining this steady flow of card advantage because you can use these functionally free attackers to trade into much larger, more relevant cards and keep yourself above on card advantage. Henna is a very strong card, and that is the reason she is so prominent currently. The next card type I want to talk about is the Spirit. This is the second part of deck construction, because it is what provides your splash shard. Or, just augments the first with more of the first, but that's not really common right now. Whatever. Anyways, Fizzy, the Water Spirit. The first parts of Fizzy that I am going to pull out are his shard symbol and his affinity number. The affinity number in the top left, as I mentioned, dictates the amount of cards that share a shard with this spirit that you can include in your deck. Fizzy allows and mandates that you will play 8 water shard cards in any deck where Fizzy is your spirit. Now, if you're playing a deck with a water champion, those 8 are just part of the 40, and it doesn't really make a difference because you can just play all water cards. In good decks, like Henna Fizzy or Aten Fizzy, the 8 specific water shard cards you play have to be very intelligently selected. You'll note that 8 is a very curious number choice here. A playset in Argent Saga, the maximum amount of cards of a given name that you can include in your deck, non-legendary cards, is 3. So by choosing 8 as the affinity number for spirits currently, we are restricted to not playing just straight 3 playsets of cards we want to splash, which I find very interesting. Next, let's look at this adorable art. Oh my god, guys. Do you see this? Do you see this little frog? Do you see those little ladybugs? That's a spirit frog sitting on like a fountain thing, considering eating a not spirit ladybug. I mean, come on. What more do you need? That's enough there. Text box. This is where the text on Fizzy goes. His abilities and stuff. Shard Drain 1 is a mechanic in this game that is not dissimilar to Overload from Hearthstone. Shard Drain 1 returns one of your shards to the bottom of your shard deck. Your shard deck is how you put shards into play. Now, as I'm covering card types first, basic gameplay mechanics have not been brought up yet, and I'm going to trickle those out through this as they come up before I do a structured thing later in this video. Your shard deck is the mana production method that this game employs, and is actually very similar to the Hearthstone mana production method, where at the start of your turn, you just get one more. Up to 10, then you're done. In Argent Saga, you randomize your 10 shards and put them in your shard deck to the side under your deck. What this means practically is that you're never going to be stuck in these runs of either you're just drawing lands off the top, you're not drawing any lands off the top. Mana screw isn't really possible in this game, just like it's not really possible in Hearthstone. You just have your resources. You get them for free at the start of every turn, up to your cap, and then you're done. This is Fizzy. Get used to seeing Fizzy. Fizzy is very strong. I love Fizzy. The next card type in order is the Shard. You'll see here the Argent Shard. This is... it is the only shard right now. This is kind of all we have for shard light production. So, let's talk about it. In the top right, there is a shard symbol. This indicates that it is a neutrally aligned card, likely the reason that we can just play 10 in our shard deck. The implication of this symbol on the basic Argent Shard is that each shard may get their own specific basic shard, or non-basic shards. Next up, we have the name and the art. And yes, I'm going to be breaking these out every single time for you so you can appreciate the art, because I really like the art in in this game so far. The alpha intro decks did a really cool thing where they grayscaled this art and then brought back out only the color of the shard around that primary one that is the color of the intro deck. So you get some pretty cool effects from that, and I really like it. I really like the alpha intro decks art. The sketches, the specific shard coloring, it's just clean. But that's enough to dwell on here. This is called the Argent Shard. I've mentioned this. This is a basic shard. As I commented, there will likely be non-basic shards in the future. We have not had any spoiled yet, but there's a good chance we'll get one in the very first set, so you may see something in the next couple of weeks if you start paying attention to Argent Saga as a result of this video. Let me know if you do. It exhausts to produce one. Very simply, it taps and it makes a mana. There's not a whole lot of complexity here, so I'm not going to dwell on it. That's what they do. Let's trickle in a little more of the turn progression here while we're at it. As I mentioned in the last bit, you put a shard from your shard deck into play at the beginning of your charge phase. Your charge phase, equivalent to the untap step in Magic, does not come before you draw a card for the turn in this game. In Argent Saga, the first thing you do on your turn is draw a card. What this means is that if you have effects that are not timing gated, so if you have instacast cards in your hand, or if you have abilities on your units or your champion or your spirit that let you consume shard light, you can tap your untapped shards or exhaust your readied shards from the prior turn cycle after you've drawn, but before you go to your charge phase and ready them all again. There is a little bit of nuance to the fact that you charge after you draw, and I really like that too. It's enabled me to make some pretty sweet plays. That is the Argent Shard. Let's move on. The next card type is the last of the card types you don't really have a whole lot of selection on. These are the towers, the fundamental survival mechanic, life mechanic of this game. There are 5 towers, and I will show you all of them when I actually cover towers as part of the structure of the game as opposed to just the card types. This is the Tower of Light. You can see that because it says it in the name, but also it says it in the shard indicator in the top right. If you've been paying attention, that little sun is the light shard indicator. That indicates that the Tower of Light is the light tower, or a light tower, as we will likely be getting more different options for towers. You see that it has what looks like a power at the top of the card. That is the amount of damage that this tower needs to take in one turn to be destroyed. Let's comment on damage real fast in this game. Damage functions the same way as Magic. It accumulates over a turn, and it refreshes at the end of the turn, beginning of the next turn. It's somewhere in the comprehensive rules. I'm pretty sure it's at the end of the turn. There's like a cleanup step that handles those mechanics. But the point is, you have to hit this thing with 1500 power in a turn to be able to destroy it. Not all towers have the same power. Some towers have 1000. Currently, those are the only 2 numbers we see, 1000 and 1500, but even that provides some mechanical depth. It means that your 500 power units are great at scouting because these towers are face down in random order at the start of the game. So my 500 can freely attack into these face down towers and reveal them for me, which gives me the ability to play around these rubber band effects that they have on them. If I had a unit with 1000 power, it becomes much riskier to start trying to scout with it. Conversely, it also is able to destroy some of the lower strength towers, and if I do that early game, then I might be setting myself up fairly effectively to not get blown out late game. Anyways, that's enough. So it is a light shard tower with 1500 power. Let's look at the art. Pretty art. It's also got a name. That's enough there. The rules text. It is a tower. You can see that by the presence of the type line tower. Yeah. When this card is destroyed, you can put into play a Knight token with Guardian. Unit Knight Light 2000. Nice, clean, elegant. When it's destroyed, you get a big defender. Guardian is a keyword mechanic in Argent Saga that allows you to block. Let's talk about a little more rules. In Argent Saga, when I attack with a unit, I declare an attack on either a tower or an opposing exhausted unit. You can attack exhausted units or you can attack towers. You cannot attack readied units. Or, for magic terms, I cannot attack a tapped creature or an untapped creature. I can only attack a tapped creature or one of the towers, which is basically your opponent. Guardian is a keyword ability that allows the unit with Guardian to exhaust and intercept an attack, basically. It can only intercept one attack, so you cannot exhaust 2 units with Guardian to double block, basically. It simply lets you say, I'm actually going to take this attack instead of whatever your original target was. Combat functions as normal. Let's move on to the card types that you can influence in deck construction. Here, we have the Stormcaster of Azure Tower. This is, as you can see from the indicators I have just pulled out, is a 6 cost unit. That number in the top left on units, on spells, and on augments is their Shard Light or Rock Juice cost. This is how much you need to produce to be able to play the spell. I can't really put it any more simply than that. That's how it works. In the top right, you will see, as on everything, the shard indicator. This is a water unit. You can also tell by the blue border, the reference to Azure, which is blue in other languages. And yeah, that's all I got. It is a 4,000 power unit, which is immense in this game. Most things are sitting in the 2,000 to 2,500 range or less. So 4,000 he's hefty. He is a beater. Looking at the art, we can tell that glasses and optical manipulation with lenses is apparently something that is present in the Argos universe. I guess that shouldn't really surprise us given that they have magic. So, that's all I got there. He's got a good beard, though. This is also a unit, as I mentioned, saying it was a unit, and also talking about this unit's power. And you can tell that based on the fact that it says unit right there. That is the type line. That's where it says unit. It lets you know this is a unit. It also has some keyword mechanics, the first of which is Destroyer. This is a very high-end and swingy mechanic because, as you can see from the parentheses and italics, when this card attacks a tower, it attacks 2 towers instead. That means that it is very effective at closing out a game because it gets to hit twice on your opponent's consumable resource that kills them. It also has an Arrive ability. Arrive is the keyword mechanic, similar to, I think, Battle Cry in Hearthstone, and when this creature enters the battlefield in Magic. I don't know why we haven't keyworded that yet. If there is a destroyed water tower, return up the 2 target units your opponent controls to the bottom of their owner's deck in any order. You'll note, as you see some of these cards through gameplay, that each shard has a unit with an Arrive ability that only triggers if there is a destroyed tower of the card's shard. This is the water variant, obviously, but they all have very powerful effects that trigger if there's a destroyed tower of their shard. Stormcaster of Azure Tower is debatably the best among them because it puts 2 units on the bottom of their owner's deck. That is strong. So these kind of abilities are the sorts of abilities that units will get. I am also, while we're here in the unit segment, going to go through the keywords that are provided on the quick start list. Now I'm just going to talk about these basic units, or these basic keywords, because, again, intro video. Active. Cards in a vertical position are considered active cards. This is equivalent to untapped or readied or whatever you want to call these. Exhaust. Cards in a horizontal position are considered exhausted cards. This is equivalent to tapped or to tapped or to tapped. They have been used. Guardian. Exhaust this card to make an attacking unit attack this unit instead. As I mentioned previously, Guardian lets you intercept combat, but only for one specific unit at one specific time. Arrive. When this unit enters the field zone, do a thing. This is equivalent to an enter the battlefield or a battle cry or whatever ability. When you play it and it enters the field, something happens. Soul Burst. Not actually on units, but it is still a keyword that we're going to just comment on. Flip this card face down. As I mentioned with the spirits, when you Soul Burst them, they're face down, so they don't actually have any abilities anymore. They're just the back of an Argent Saga card. So Soul Burst is a one-shot use. You flip it face down, it's gone. At some point, I have a strong feeling they will add dual-faced cards with Soul Burst. Maybe a spirit that when you Soul Burst it, changes into a different spirit, a weaker spirit, or a stronger spirit. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Soul Burst is a cool mechanic, and I am very excited to see where they go with it in the future. Instacast. You can play this card anytime you have priority. Instacast is the removal of timing restrictions on your cards. It is the flash keyword, or the instant type. It lets you play it on your opponent's turn, in your draw step, in combat, whenever you want. Ruined. When this unit is destroyed or sacrificed. This is a death trigger. So whenever from the field the unit is destroyed, sacrificed, goes to the discard pile basically, you get to trigger a thing of some sort. Quickness. This unit can attack or exhaust immediately when played. You will note that the presence of a haste equivalent keyword means there is a summoning sickness equivalent rule. When you play a unit, it cannot attack or use an exhaust ability immediately. It has to wait a turn cycle, and then you can do stuff with it. Are you grokking this yet? It's actually pretty familiar, like all of it, honestly. Target attack. This unit can attack any unit. I haven't shown you anything with target attack yet, but it is an ability that lets the unit attack active units, not just exhausted units or shards. So target attack lets you kill off the units your opponents basically are trying to keep active so you can't remove them. Maybe something with a powerful static ability. Maybe something that is a cost-reducing water 3-drop. Expelled. Place this card in the Expel Zone. The Expel Zone is removed from the game. It is basically exile, or the void, or what have you. Shard Drain. Return one of your shards to the bottom of your shard deck. And I think that is enough on keywords for now, so let's move on to some more card types. The spell type goes on spells. Imagine that. Let's take a look at Hurricane Shot. You can see from the indicator in the upper left-hand corner that it is a 2-cost spell. You will note from the small lightning bolt next to that it has Instacast, and you can tell this without looking at the actual text box. That is what that indicator means. It is similar to, in Magic, the color indicator that goes on newer templated cards like Ancestral Vision. It is more accurately similar to the way on old cards with flashback, like an Odyssey block, they used to put a little tombstone in the top left of the card, so that when you had it in your graveyard fanned out, you could see that there was a thing there that had an ability. And I really like this indicator because when I fan my hand out, I don't actually need to see the text box to see which spells I have in my hand or which anything I have in my hand that doesn't have timing restrictions. It's very easy to get that information from your hand with a quick fan. And it's a wind card. And the symbol in the top right is the wind shard indicator. The art is, well, kind of painful looking. Dudes blasting people to pieces with wind, wearing some kind of Bushido helmet. This is an instacast spell, as I mentioned, so you can cast it anytime you have priority. As an additional cost to play this card, return an air unit from your field to its owner's hand. Destroy target unit with cost 4 or less. So this is basically a murder that bounces a creature that is specifically air type from your field to your hand. You can use this to save a unit from combat. You can use this to save 2 units from combat if you're smart. You can use this to save units from a removal spell, or so on and so forth. I really like this card, and I think it is very strong. But this isn't a set review, so we won't dwell on that. This is a spell. We have one more card type before we are done covering all the basic card types. Man, the length on this really got away from me. Alright, well, let's move on to augments. The last card type we are going to talk about today, as I just mentioned, is the augment. Our representative augment of choice is the standard shard sword. This is going to be the first true light card I have shown you in detail because currently light is mediumly strong. There's only a couple of strong cards in the shard right now, which is why at best it is currently a splash shard to something more powerful like fire or water. This is a 1-cost augment, as you can see from the 1-cost indicator in the upper left-hand corner. And it is a light card, as indicated by the light indicator in the upper right-hand corner. It has dope art showing this floating, basically a katana, I guess. This, as I commented, is an augment. You can tell that from the augment type line. There is a dot, and then following that dot, there is another word. This is how subtypes look in this game. This is an augment subtyped gear, which is the equipment subtype of Argent Saga. You would be able to gather this yourself if I hadn't explained it by moving your eyes a few millimeters to the south. Equip to target unit. It's an augment that goes on a unit. Compare this, as I mentioned, to an augment that may go on a player. Standard Shard Sword gives the unit it is equipped to 500 power, an additional 500 power, and target attack. As I mentioned, that is the keyword mechanic that allows a unit to attack even a readied unit, so it can attack any unit. This is what augments do. They sit and they modify units or they modify players. At this point, I have now run far longer than I ever intended to on just introducing the basic card types and how they work together, along with some basic game mechanics. I'm going to cut this video off here, and I'm going to push the mechanics to another video. Then I will have a few gameplay videos to follow. Thanks to everyone for sticking it out this far. I know this has been quite a long video. Hopefully, I have delivered an easy to understand for a Magic player introduction to the cards of Argent Saga. I am looking forward to seeing you next time in the gameplay mechanics of Argent Saga, so I will see you then.